Bing bongy bong, bing bongy bong. This is Joe, the bearded historian. He'll tell you an interesting story. Be careful of his soldiers, they can be brats. This is Angel, she's an entity. She'll cause chaos and plant her hands at you. This is Sue, she likes spirits, not the alcohol. She's the reason this channel exists. This is David, he likes fire trucks. He's here occasionally. Bing bongy bong, bing bongy bong, bing bongy bong. We preserve his story.
It is Wednesday, and I am almost feeling normal. Not quite yet, but I'm getting there. Today's video is, kind of special. It's going to be one of favorites. It's about a musical. Because our children like musicals, and I enjoy some of them, most of them. Are you ready? Here we go. Shout out time. Here's a shout out just for you. You support me, so I support you. The shout out is for our friends. Let's see who it is today. And of course, a hint of what the musical is today. Alright, we got Melinda, Fractured, Strong Mind, Big Ben, Eric, Brick Girls, Jocelyn, Mind Forked, New, M&J, Railroad, Raven, Moon, Bobby, Nut, there's Dave, there's Laura, there's Jody, Hillbilly, Scrapping, Not Your Daily, Principal, Rural, Peaches, Stony, Graph, let's see, Stace, Six Bows, let's see, who else do we see? There's Duo, there's Day One. Is it going to be Day One? I think it might be Day One. It's going to be Day One. Hang on. Alright. Bearded Historian's going to tell you something magical or musical or something in between the M's.
Something delving into culture, heaven forbid.
Culture? Heaven forbid.
I know.
What do we know about culture?
It's usually found in the test tube. You shake it a couple times and flick it to see.
Wrong kind of culture.
Wrong culture, darn. I knew there was something wrong. Anyway, digging through the events of the next day or two, my wife had found a neat selection of odds and ends and odds, and this one is kind of interesting because it touched near to a topic that I truly enjoy, David likes, Mommy seemed to enjoy, and Angel got a kick out of it. But basically it was the end of the run for the musical Cats. So here's a little bit of the full story behind the production.
I
like a production and a rendition. But for Cats, it's based off of a T.S. Eliot poetry book, Old Possum's Book of Practical Cats, made in 1939, and the songs in the music consist of Eliot's verse set to music by Andrew Lloyd Webber, big name. Music was unusual in its construction, along with Eliot's poems, music and dance are the main focus of the show, at the expense of a traditional narrative structure. Musicologists William Everett and Paul Laird describe Cats as combining elements of the revue and concept musical. Now the plot centers on a tribe of cats called the Jellicles as they come together at the annual Jellicle Ball to decide which one of them will ascend to the Heaviside layer of their version of heaven and be reborn into a new life. The bulk of the musical consists of different contenders being introduced either by themselves or by other cats. Now, Old Possum's Book of Practical Cats is a collection of light poetry about cats that Eliot had originally written for his godchildren in the 1930s. Due to the rhythmic nature of Eliot's work, there have been previous attempts before Cats at setting the poems to music, though none of these attempts had been met with much critical or commercial success. John Snelson and musicologists wrote of the poems. They provided excellent material for musicalization, as Eliot's style in this collection is reminiscent of a popular lyricist. The poet uses repeated catchphrases, strong hooks, steady rhythm, and outrageous attention-grabbing witty rhymes, which are the ingredients of every well-crafted popular lyric. Now, most of the lyrics in Cats were taken from Old Possum's Book of Practical Cats with very minor alterations. The supplementary verses from unpublished poems by Eliot were adapted for Grisabella the Glamour Cat and Journey to the Heaviside Layer, while the song, The Moments of Happiness, was taken from a passage in Eliot's The Dry Salvages. Cats director Trevor Nunn and lyricist Richard Stilgoe provided the remaining lyrics, namely for the opening number, Jellicle Songs for Jellicle Cats, and the most famous song of the musical, Memory. The former was written by Nunn and Stilgoe and was modeled after an unpublished poem by Eliot titled Pollicle Dogs and Jellicle Cats, while the latter was written by Nunn based on another Eliot poem titled Rhapsody on a Windy Night. Now, Lloyd Webber began composing the songs in late 1977 as a songwriting exercise, partly because Eliot's book had been a childhood favorite, and partially to see if he could write music to predetermined lyrics. The compositions were performed privately for friends, but Lloyd Webber had no further intentions for them at the time. After his song cycle, Tell Me on a Sunday, was televised by the BBC in early 1980, Lloyd Webber began to consider using his musicalization of Eliot's poems in the same vein for a televised concert anthology. He approached producer Cameron McTavish to explore possible avenues for the songs. Now, Practical Cats, as the show is called, was first presented as a song cycle at the 1980 Summer Sydmonton Festival. The concert was performed by Gemma Craven, Gary Vaughn, and Paul Nicholas. Eliot's widow and literary executor Valerie was in attendance, and she brought along various unpublished cat-themed poems by Eliot. One of these was Grisabella the Glamour Cat, and although rejected from Eliot's book for being too sad for children, gave Lloyd Webber the idea for a full-blown musical. He explained, "The music and dramatic images that this created for me made me feel that there was very much more to this project than I had realized. I immediately decided that I needed the support of another to encourage me to rework my settings and see if a dramatic whole could be woven from the delightful verse that was now to be allowed to develop." Thus, Lloyd Webber decided to turn Practical Cats into a musical co-produced by Macintosh and the really useful groups Brian Bowley. Now, shortly after the Sydmonton Festival, Lloyd Webber began setting the unpublished poems he had given to music, a few of which were later added to the show. He also composed the overture and the Jellicle Ball, incorporating analog synthesizers into these orchestrations to try to create a unique electronic soundscape. Meanwhile, Macintosh recruited Nunn, the then artistic director of Royal Shakespeare Company, to direct Practical Cats. Nunn was an unusual choice as he was considered too highbrow for musical theater, but Macintosh felt that the pedigree director was needed to ensure Valerie Eliot's approval for the project. After much persuasion, Nunn came on board and was joined by the RSC colleagues, choreographer Gillian Lynn, and set and costume designer John Napier. Nunnally originally envisioned Practical Cats as a chamber piece for 5 actors and 2 pianos, which he felt would reflect Eliot's charming, slightly offbeat, mildly satiric view of the late 1930s London. However, he yielded to Lloyd Webber's more ambitious vision for the musical. Nunn was also convinced that for the musical to have wide commercial appeal that the producers desired, it could not remain as a series of isolated numbers, but instead to have a narrative through line. He was therefore tasked with piecing the self-contained poems together into a story. Nunn wrote about the significance Grisabella the Glamour Cat had on the construction of the narrative. It says, here in 8 lines, Eliot was describing an intensely recognizable character with powerful human resonances, while introducing the themes of morality, the past, which occur repeatedly in the major poems. We decided that if Eliot had thought of being serious, touching, almost tragic in his presentation of a feline character, that we had to be doing a show which could contain that material and the implications of it. Furthermore, we would have to achieve the sense of progression through themes more than incidents. An event called the Jellicle Ball was referenced by Eliot in the poem The Song of the Jellicles, while a cat version of heaven, known as the Heaviside Layer, was mentioned in one of the unpublished poems. Nunn expanded on these concepts by conceiving the Jellicle Ball as an annual ritual in which the cat's vies to be chosen to ascend to the Heaviside Layer, thus giving the characters a reason to gather and sing about themselves in the musical. He also added that the element of a rebirth as a play on the idea that cats have 9 lives. Now, one of Nunn's stipulations for agreeing to direct Practical Cats was that actress Judi Dench would be cast in the musical. Lloyd Webber was happy to oblige, given her credentials, and so Dench joined the company in the dual roles of Grisabella and Jenny Anydots. Former Royal Ballet principal dancer Wayne Sleep was offered the part of Mr. Mistopheles after Lloyd Webber and McIntosh attended a performance by his dance troupe, one of the many dance showcases that saw preparation for the musical. Casting for the other roles began in November 1980 with auditions held across the UK for dancers who could sing and act. There are initial disagreement over the casting of Paul Nicholas as Rum Tum Tugger. Nunn had misgivings about the actor's easygoing attitude, but eventually yields to Lloyd Webber, McIntosh, and Lynn, all of whom were keen on Nicholas for the role. Sarah Brightman, who had already made a name for herself with the chart hit I Lost My Heart to Starship Trooper, arranged a private audition and was cast as the then undecided role. By November, the full cast had been assembled. Meanwhile, McIntosh engaged the advertising agency, De Winters, to design a poster for the musical. After much back and forth, the agent presented a minimalist poster consisting of a pair of yellow feline eyes with dancing silhouettes for the pupils set against a black backdrop. The producers and the creative team looked at the design and felt the title, Practical Cats, looked out of place when paired with the image of the cat's eyes. The musical title was thus just shortened to just Cats. Now, the musical was scheduled to open on April the 30th, 1981, with previews starting on April 22nd. Shortly before tickets went on sale in mid-February, Nunn revealed to the alarmed producers that he was struggling to write the script for the musical. Despite still having no established book or score, rehearsals began on the 9th of March, 1981, in a church hall in Chiswick, London. The situation improved later that day when Lloyd Webber, McIntosh, and Nunn met with Richard Stilwell, a musician known for his ability to improvise lyrics on the spot, in the hopes that Stilwell could still write the opening song for the musical. By the next evening, Stilwell had produced a draft for Jellicle Songs for Jellicle Cats. However, Memory, an 11 o'clock number for Grisabella, and Nunn insisted the show needed as an emotional center, still had no lyrics at that point. Lloyd Webber's former writing partner, Tim Rice, was brought in to write a lyric for the song, but his version was rejected by Nunn for being too depressing.
Oops.
The lyrics for Memory was not completed by Nunn until well into the previews. Many of the ensemble characters were created by the original cast through extensive improvisation sessions held during the rehearsal process. Said Nunn, on day one of the rehearsals, we had what was 15 poems set to music, and 5 weeks later, we had a show with characters, relationships, and stories running from beginning to end.
That's kind of fun.
Yeah, so I was like, let's wing it.
I mean, imagine okay, I wrote a song, I hand it to this person who's playing Mistopheles, and he just goes, hey, I got this cat, and goes wild with it, and you're just like, yes, that's the cat.
That's your part. You're in it. You're go. Go for it.
Or no. What if you change this around? Because I can see, happening both ways, where some things fit and other things don't. So that's kind of awesome. He's just like, here's the music, do whatever, and then like, yes, no, let's change this.
Pull the pin, throw the grenade. Now, the production did have a last-minute mishap when Ditch snapped her Achilles tendon during the rehearsals for the old Grumble cat and had to be put out for 1 week before the first preview. Shortly after this, the original music director, Chris Walker, also had to leave the production for medical reasons and was replaced by the film conductor, Harry Rabinowitz. Ditch's understudy, Myra Sands, replaced her as Jenny Anydots, while Elaine Page agreed to take over the role of Grisabella. Opening night was pushed back to May 11th, but McIntosh refused to postpone the previews as he wanted to dispel the industry rumors that the production was an impending debacle. Now, the development of Cats was also plagued by financial troubles. Macintosh struggled to raise the £450,000 needed to stage the musical on the West End, as major investors were skeptical of the show's premise and refused to back it. Lloyd Webber personally underwrote the musical and even took out a second mortgage on his house for the down payment of the theater. He later recalled that if Cats had been a commercial failure, it would have left him in financial ruin. That's one heck of an investment on your product.
Good thing that didn't happen.
Yeah. The remaining capital was eventually raised by small investments procured by 220 individuals through newspaper advertisements. After the musical became a massive hit, the rate of return for these investors was estimated to have exceeded 3,500%.
That's kind of awesome.
That is cool. Yeah. On to the plot. Here is the plot.
It is?
Now, Act 1, when the Cats are maddened by the midnight dance, after the overture, the tribe of cats known as the Jellicles would gather on stage and describe themselves and their purpose. The cats, who break the fourth wall throughout the show,
Right.
and then notice that they are being watched by the human audience, proceed to explain how the different cats of the tribe are named. This is followed by a ballet solo performed by Victoria to signal the beginning of the Jellicle Ball. And at this moment, Wollstonecraft, the show's main narrator, explains that tonight the Jellicle Patriarch, my favorite, Old Deuteronomy, will make an appearance and choose one of the cats to be reborn into a new life of the Heaviside layer. The track introduces the first contender, Jenny Anydots, or the old grumble cat, a large tabby cat who lazes around all day, but come nighttime becomes active, teaching mice and cockroaches various activities to curb their naturally destructive habits. Just as Jenny Anydots finishes her song, the music changes and the Rum-Tum Tugger makes his extravagant entrance in front of the tribe. He's very fickle and unappealable, but for he will do as he do, and there's no doing anything about it. Then as the song fades, a shabby old gray cat stumbles out wanting to be reconciled. This is Grisabella. As the cats back away from her in fear and disgust, they explain her unfortunate state. Grisabella leaves, and the music changes to a cheerful, upbeat number as Bustopher Jones, a fat cat in a coat as fastidious black, is brought to the stage. Bustopher Jones is among the elite of the cats and visits prestigious gentlemen's clubs. Suddenly, a loud crash startles the tribe. The cats run off stage in fright. Hushed giggling and sounds signal the entrance of Mungo Jerry and Ruffle Teaser, a pair of near-identical cats. They are mischievous petty burglars who enjoy causing trouble around the human neighborhood. After they finish, they are caught off guard and confronted by the rest of the cats. Finally, the Jellicle Patriarch, Old Deuteronomy, arrives before the tribe. He is a wise old cat who has lived many lives, and he's tasked with choosing which Jellicle will go to the Heaviside lair every year. The cats put on a play for Old Deuteronomy, telling a story about two dog tribes clashing in the streets and subsequently being scared away by the great Rumpus Cat. A moral from the Old Deuteronomy is interrupted by a second loud crash, presumably from a cavity, which sends the alarmed cat scurrying. After a quick patrol from a cavity, Old Deuteronomy deems it a false alarm and summons the cats back to the main celebration begins, in which the cats sing and display their Terpsichorean powers. During the ball, Grisabella appears and tries to dance along, but her age and decrepit condition prevent her from doing so. As a result, she is once again shunned by the other cats, but that does not stop her from vowing to return for another chance to be in the spotlight, while a guilty Old Deuteronomy looks on. Now in Act 2 of the Jellicle Ball afterwards, Old Deuteronomy gathers his tribe to contemplate the natures of happiness. Jemina, the youngest of all Jellicles, understands the Patriarch is referring to Grisabella and passes the message on to the rest of the tribe. Gus, short for asparagus, shuffles towards the next cat to be introduced. He was once a famous actor, but is now old and suffers from palsy, which makes his paws shake. He is accompanied by Jelly Roarer, the caretaker, who tells of his exploits. Gus was then remembers how he once played the infamous pirate captain, Growl Tiger. He tells of Growl Tiger's romance with Lady Grimmelmoon, leading to the pirate's capture by a horde of Siamese cats and his execution by walking the plank.
Oh dear.
Back in the present, after Gus' exit, Skimbleshanks is seen sleeping in the corner. He is the cat who is unofficially in charge of the nightly train from London to Gallowgate, and he will not depart, and it will not depart unless he is on board. Within the song, the whole steam train engine is assembled out of objects in the junkyard. If you guys ever get a chance to see Cats, this is an awesome set of circumstance. Because you think of all the stuff that's on the stage looks like a backyard. There's pieces everywhere. But slowly it starts to assemble into an operating train engine. It's really cool. With a third crash and an evil laugh, the most wanted cat McCavity appears. He is the so-called Napoleon of crime, who always manages to evade the authorities. McCavity's henchmen capture Old Deuteronomy and take off with the patriarch in tow. As Moonstrap and his troop gave chase, Demeter and Babaruda explain what they know about McCavity. When they are finished, McCavity returns disguised as Old Deuteronomy, but his cover is blown by Demeter, and he ends up getting beaten by Moonstrap and Alonzo. McCavity holds his own for a time, but as the rest of the tribe begin to gang up and surround him, he shorts out the stage lights and escapes the resulting confusion. After the fight, Rum Tum Tugger calls upon the magician Mr. Mistopheles for help. Known as the original conjuring cat, Mr. Mistopheles can perform feats of magic that no other cat can do. He displays his magical powers in a dance solo and uses them to restore the lights and bring back Old Deuteronomy. Now the jellicle choice can be made. Now before Old Deuteronomy can make his decision, Grisabella returns to the junkyard and he allows her to address the gathering. Her faded appearance and lonely disposition have a little effect on the song. With acceptance and encouragement from Gemina and Victoria, her appeal succeeds and she is chosen to be the one to go to the Heaviside Lair and be reborn into a new jellicle life. A tide rises from the pile of junk, carrying Grisabella and Old Deuteronomy partway towards the sky. Grisabella then completes the journey on her own. Finally, Old Deuteronomy closes the show with giving the final speech to the audience. Now, musical numbers, as they roll through in Act 1, you have the overture, prelude, the naming of cats, the invitation to the Jellicle Ball, the Old Grumble Cat, the Rum Tum Tugger, Grisabella, the Glamour Cat. What's funny is you could either watch the video, but take it to play if you can see it live. It's awesome. Or, if you just have the cassette or the CD, you can play it. You almost picture these events. It's just really.
We had the tape, we had the CD, we broke them off, and now we have it on digital.
Yes.
Because we're very bad with physical media.
Thankfully, digital doesn't break.
Yeah.
The internet, I was going to say the internet might be a question mark, but but personally, offhand, some of my favorites: Memory, The Addressing of Cats, The Journey to the Heaviside Lair, McCavity. There's a lot of great hits in this soundtrack as far as it all goes. But they had like woodwinds, horns, trumpets, trombones, keyboards, percussion, a cello, guitars, electric upright bass, and drums. But for the general characters, they have Asparagus or Gus, the theater cat, Bobble and Marina, a flirty and confident red queen, Bustopher Jones, or the fat cat, Demeter, a troubled and skittish queen, best friends with Balmerina, and the two shared intense hatred for McCavity, Grisabella, Jelly Roram, Gemina or Syllabub, Jenny Anydots, the old gummy cat, McCavity, who nasty business, if only in the crime, Mr. Mistopheles, Mungo Jerry, Monster Trap, Old Deuteronomy, again, one of my favorites. And the guy that sings it, you get the shivers because of the way the guy can sing. Ripple Teaser, Rum Tum Tugger, Skimbleshanks, the Railway Cat, and Victoria. There are other characters who have appeared in notable productions, like Admedius, or Plato, Alonzo, a black and white Tom, Tumble Brutus, Tom Kitten, Carbuckety, or Pounceville, sounds like a fun cat, Cassandra, Coripat and Tantamille, Electra, a tortoiseshell kitten, etc., Gorillabone, who is Growl Tiger's lover in the Growl Tiger's Last Stand. Growl Tiger, of course, and the Rumpus Cat, which is a really funky cat. Now, what's kind of funny is some of the different notable cast, going through the different characters. I did see, interestingly enough, when they talk about Old Deuteronomy, there's two names that played this guy, and one of them, if you follow anything with Hollywood, Brian Blessed actually played Old Deuteronomy in the West End production. And if you've seen Flash Gordon, yeah, he's just that much fun on stage too. Here in America, Ken Page held the throne for a number of years. And both of them have excellent vocal abilities. But then you got notable replacements as time went along. McCavity was replaced by Richard Armitage. Alonzo was replaced by Warren Carlisle. Steve Houghton. Asparagus was replaced by Paul Bentley. Mark Winter. Michael Sundin took over from Bill Bailey. Demeter was taken over by Aaron Lorden and Louise Fribo. Electra was taken over by Sarah Jane Honeywell. Also took over, etc. So, Grisabella, interestingly enough, went through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 different actresses.
Wow.
So yeah, it's
a
quite
hard
a
role
piece.
to play, I guess.
Yeah. But now, the thing that's also funny about these is the production. The Cats was told completely through music with no dialogue in between the songs, although there are occasions where musical companies spoke in verse. Lloyd Webber's compositions employ an eclectic range of musical styles as to magnify the characters' contrasting personalities. For example, the runtime cover is introduced with a rock song.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
The following Grisabella is accompanied by a dramatic operatic aria. Deuteronomy makes its grand entrance into a lullaby turned anthem, and Gus's nostalgia for the past is reflected in an old-fashioned musical number. Many of the songs are passages of their respective genres, whilst Nelson attributes the show's origin as a song cycle. Lloyd Webber also employs various techniques to help connect the pieces, namely, the score relies heavily on recurring motifs as well as the use preludes and reprises. For example, the melodic fragments of memory are sung by Grisabella and Gemma at several points in the show before the song is sung in full, serving to characterize Grisabella in the foreshadow of her final number. Similarly, Lloyd Webber introduces a fugue in their overture, and variations of this theme are then repeated throughout the musical until it's finally resolved as Grisabella ascends to the Heaviside layer. Now, the musical also features an unusual amount of group description numbers. According to the musicologist Jessica Sternfeld, such numbers are usually relegated to the prelude and nothing more, as seen as another opening, another show from Kiss Me Kate, and tradition from Fiddler on the Roof. Love Fiddler on the Roof. Cats, on the other hand, features 4 Jellicle-defining songs. Jellicle songs for Jellicle cats, the naming of cats, the Jellicle Ball, and the addressing of cats. These numbers allow the cats to celebrate their tribe and species as a whole in between the ones that celebrate individual members. Now, choreography. Regarded as one of the most challenging shows to dance in musical theater history, dance plays a major role in Cats, as the original creative team had specifically set out to create England's first dance musical. Before Cats, the industry-wide belief was that the British dancers were inferior to their Broadway counterparts. Risking hiring a British choreographer, Lynn, for a British dance musical was described by one historian as a vivid and marvelous gesture of transatlantic defiance. Making Lynn's job more challenging was the fact that the music in Cats is unceasing, and the majority of the cast remains on stage throughout nearly the entire show.
Yeah.
Now, Lynn choreographed the original London production with a dance troupe consisting of her assistant Lindsay Dolan, the dance captain Joanne Robinson, and cast members Fidiola Hughes and John Thornton. The resulting choreography blends ballet, modern dance, jazz, and tap, interspersed with acrobatic displays. Lynn also trained the cast to evoke the moment, physically and behavior of actual cats. These feline traits were incorporated into the movement and choreography so to create an anthropomorphic illusion. Lynn considered the 13-minute Jellicle Ball dance to be the crux of the show, noting that in order to work as a dance-driven musical, Cats had to succeed there or die.
Yeah.
Yeah. She recalled the difficulty she faced in persuading Lloyd Webber to add the extended dance break, culminating in her and her dance crew having to dance all the pants to the Jellicle Ball to convince him. Now, the original staging of the Cats at the New London Theatre was considered revolutionary and one of the first truly immersive theater experiences. Instead of the conventional proscenium, the theater was a quasi in the round with a central revolving stage. Kind of like, we just saw it, Hamilton.
I was like, wait, what? Yeah.
Nunn and Napier had sought to create an environment rather than a set, and around $900,000 was spent remodeling the New London in preparation for the show. This included mounting sections of the stalls onto the theater's 60-foot revolve, such that the audience moved around with the stage. When the show was brought to Broadway, the Winter Garden Theater was given a similar $2 million makeover. Its proscenium stage was converted into a thrust, and parts of its roof were torn through to allow the effect of Grisabel's ascension to the Heaviside layer.
Wow.
Nunn was, something it went big on this. Nunn was also adamant that the orchestra for Cats be hidden backstage, out of the audience's view, so not to break the immersion. Adding to the experience, the show usually included a lot of the audience interaction, such as during the overture when the Cats don flashing green eyes as they make their way through the audience in the darkened theater.
That would be cool.
Yeah, in the original Broadway production, catwalks were built to connect the stage to the boxes and balcony as to give the cast access to the entire auditorium during the show. Well, that would have been awesome. Now, set and costume design. Angel's favorite part. Napier began designing the set in November of 1980, wanting to a place where cats might congregate together, which also included maximum room for dancing. The set consists of a junkyard filled with oversized props to give the illusion that the cast are the size of actual cats. It remains the same throughout the show without any scene changes. Over 2,500 of these scaled-up props were used to fill the whole auditorium in the original Broadway production.
Wow.
That's crazy. Napier also designed the costumes, combining cat and human features based on hints given in Eliot's poems while ensuring they did not impede the dancers' movements. The costumes generally consisted of a unitard, a wig that is fashioned to suggest the presence of feline ears, patches resembling body fur, and arm and leg warmers to give the performers' hands and feet a more paw-like appearance. As with the contrasting music and dance styles, the costumes and makeup were used to bring out each character's distinct personality. For example, the costume of the Flirtatious Balmerina is designed to accentuate her sensuality, while the markings on her costume for Gemina, the youngest of the tribe, resemble crayon scribbles. Every character's design motif is custom painted by hand onto a plain unitard to line up with their performers' individual bodies. To reproduce the hand-drawn aesthetic of Napier's original design sketches, costume painters in the original Broadway production used squeeze bottles to apply the paint. Due to the amount of dancing and cats, most of the costumes did not last longer than a few months.
I imagine not.
No. Now, here's where it gets crazy, kids. Okay, Cats has been translated into more than 15 languages and produced professionally in more than 30 countries. Now, Cats would start at the West End in New London Theatre on the 11th of May, 1981. The musical was produced by Mackintosh and Lloyd Webber's Really Useful Group, with direction by Nunn, choreographed by Lynn, who also served as the associate director, set and costume designed by Napier, lighting designed by David Hersey, sound designed by Abe Jacob, and music direction by Harry Rabinowitz. It would play 8,949 performances before closing on its 21st anniversary in 2002. That is crazy.
It's one of those things where it was like, it was going so well, why did it close? I understand dancers get tired and age, but surely somebody else could take their place.
Yeah. The final performance, interestingly enough, was broadcast live on a large outdoor screen in Covent Garden for fans who couldn't acquire a ticket. Now, Cats would hold the record for the longest running musical from 1989, when it surpassed Jesus Christ Superstar, until the 8th of October 2006, when it was surpassed by Les Miserables. Now, the musical would return
Hey.
in 2014 for a planned 12-week limited run at the London Palladium. And beginning on the 6th of December, the revival starred Nicole Scherzinger as Grisabella and featured the original creative team with direction from Doug, choreography by Lynn, and design by Napier. Lloyd Webber was also involved and rewrote the Rum-Tum Tugger for the revival. The run was later extended through 2015, and an additional 100,000 tickets were released, with Carrie Ellis replacing Scherzinger as Grisabella. The musical was returned one more time for another limited run from the 23rd of October 2015 to January the 2nd, 2016, starring Beverly Knight as Grisabella. Now, Broadway. Let's talk about Broadway. You're on this side of the lake. Cats would debut on the 7th of October in 1982 at the Winter Garden Theater with a record-breaking 6.2 million in ticket pre-sales.
Mm-hmm.
The musical was co-produced by the original London production team, along with David Geffen and the Schubert Organization. Most of the creative team original remained, with Martin Levin replacing Jacob as the sound designer, and Stanley Lebowski replacing Rabinowitz as the music director. It was the most expensive Broadway show ever mounted at the time, with a production cost of $5.5 million. Though it was recouped in its investment took less than 10 months, on the 19th of June, 1997, Cats overtook a chorus line to become the longest running show in Broadway history, with 6,138 performances. At that time, the musical was found to have had an economic impact of $3.12 billion in New York City, and it generated the most theatrical jobs of any single entity in Broadway history. By early 2000, the show's closing was scheduled for June, but subsequently pushed back after a resulting surge in ticket sales. It's closing, we gotta get a ticket, hurry up! The show would finally close on the 10th of September 2000 after a total of 15 previews and 7,485 performances. That was the New York close. One actress, Marlene Danielle, performed the Broadway production for its entire 18-year run.
That's impressive.
God, she could do it in her sleep.
Probably.
The Broadway run record was surpassed on January 9th, 2006 by Phantom of the Opera, and Cats actually remains on Broadway's as the 5th longest running show of all time. Overall, the original Broadway production grossed approximately $388 million in ticket sales.
Wow.
Now, encouraged by the reception of the first West End revival, producers began looking to bring back Cats to Broadway in early 2015. The Broadway revival opened on the 31st of July 2016 at the Neil Simon Theater. It featured new choreography by Andy Blackenmiller, and Dunn and Napier from the original creative team returned to direct and design respectively. Scherzinger, who played Grisabella in the West End revival, had originally agreed to reprise the role of Broadway, but later withdrew. Leona Lewis was cast as Grisabella instead. It was succeeded by Manny Paris 3 months later in October of 2016. The Broadway revival closed on the 30th of December 2017 after 16 previews and an additional 593 performances.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, the show, under the title Cats, the Jellicle Ball, made its off-Broadway debut at the Perelman Performing Arts Center in June of 2024 and extended twice, closing in September. The show, directed by Zala Livingston and Bill Roche, and choreographed by Arturo Lyons and Omari Wilds, was a radical reimagining of the musical, taking inspiration from the ballroom culture. Joseph Curran served as dramaturge and gender consultant. Andrew DeShields starred in Old Deuteronomy, with other cast members including Jonathan Burke as Mungo Jerry, Sidney James Harcourt as Rum Tum Tugger, Antoine Hopper as McCavity, Junior LaBeija, the MC featured in the ballroom documentary Paris is Burning as Gus, Temptress Chastity Moore as Grisabella, and Nora Scholl as Bustopher Jones. The show's first major production to depart stylistically from the original. On August 13, 2025, Andrew Lloyd Webber confirmed that the Cats, the Jellicle Ball, would transfer to Broadway in spring of 2026, with dates in the theater to be announced at a later date. The transfer would be the first production of Lloyd Webber's LW Entertainment following the company's rebranding in the summer of 2025. Now, following its Broadway debut, Cats has been staged extensively throughout North America.
Right.
The first national tour, Cats National 1, launched at the Schubert Theater in Boston in December 1983 and would close in November 1987. The opening night cast included Laurie Beechman playing Grisabella and Charlotte Diaboas playing Cassandra. Later replacements included Victoria Clark, Jessica Molaski, both playing Jelly Gordon and Gromoon. This production was a slower tour that had lengthy engagements lasting for several months in each of the 9 cities it visited. Cats National 2, a separate sit-down production at the Los Angeles Schubert Theater, ran from January 85 to November 86 and starred Kim Criswell and George De La Pena in the roles of Grisabella and Mephistopheles, respectively. A third U.S. touring company, Cats National 3, ran from 2 years, from September of 86 to September 88. Notable performers for the third tour included Jonathan Cirillo in 1986 and Bill Nolte as Old Deuteronomy in 87. Now, the fourth national company, Cats National 4, toured the United States for 13 years.
Woo!
From March 87 to December 1999.
That's probably the one you saw.
Yeah. It overtook the first national tour of Oklahoma in November of 1987 to become the longest running tour in theater history and played its 5,000th performance in July of 1999. Notable performers of the fourth tour include Amelia Marshall as Shin Silverbaum, Jan Hovarth as Grisabella, Brian Batt as Munster Trap, Jennifer Cody as Rumpelteazer, David Hibbert as Rum Tum Tugger, Natalie Toro as Grisabella, Christopher Gattelli as Mephistopheles, John Tracy Egan as Old Deuteronomy, J. Robert Spencer as Rum Tum Tugger, Mark Shadow as Bustopher Jones, Linda Balgrod as Grisabella, Andy Carl as Rum Tum Tugger, and Lena Hall as Demeter. By June of 1997, the North American touring companies had grossed over $400 million. Now, after the show's closure on Broadway in 2000, Troika Entertainment obtained the touring rights for Cats and launched the show's first non-equity national company. After a tryout at Harrah's Atlantic City in 2001, the company toured North America for 11 years from August 2001 to June 2012. Performers in this non-equity tour included Julie Garney as Jenny Anydots, Dee Ruscoli as Grisabella, and Jonathan Burke as Mungo Jerry. The 2019 a new North American equity tour, based on the 2006 Broadway revival, opened at the Providence Performing Arts Center in Rhode Island, and it was originally scheduled to run through June of 2020. However, due to the COVID pandemic, performances for this tour were suspended on the 13th of March 2020. The tour would relaunch as a non-equity production on the 21st of September 2021, my birthday.
Which one did we go to?
Was it 2023?
I can look.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Yeah.
That's why I was asking you.
Yeah. Well, I've had the joy here locally. I've seen it, let's see, 3 times. Because I saw it twice with my mom and my Aunt Ruth at the Civic Center. And then we just saw it not too long ago with David and Angel And it was just a blast. I mean, the music and the vibration and everything was just very, very neat. Interestingly enough, they had it become a hit in Canada, premiering in March of 1985 at the Elgin and Winter Garden Theatres in Toronto, and moved to Montreal 2 years later, and then toured other parts of Canada. By the time the production closed in August of 1989, and became the most successful Canadian stage production of all time, with a box office of 78 million from nearly 2 million tickets. A second company began in Toronto's former Panasonic Theatre in May of 2013, would run for 4 months and 128 performances, 28 years after the original production. Now, the musical would play down in Mexico, April 1991 to November 1992. The Spanish language production performed over 400 shows. It starred Maria del Sol as Grisabella, Manuel Landeta as Montserrat, Susana Zabalbeta as Jellyroom, Marceau Duenas as Silima, and Ariel Lopez Padilla as Macavity. A revival premiered at the Teatro San Rafael in May of 2013 with an opening night cast that included Felipa Llorando as Isabella Landeta and Mauro Duenas. After a total of 350 performances, the show closed at the Teatro San Rafael in June of 2014, and then toured 36 cities in Mexico until December 2014. Other performers who would later join the production included Lisette, Roque Banquels, Lila Dinkin, and Maria Montemiro Cruz, all who played Grisabella. Another Mexican revival was launched at the Cauquien Centennial Theater in October 2018 with Yuri as Grisabella and Landeta as Old Deuteronomy. The revival marked its 200th performance in May of 2019. Now, the United Kingdom, first UK and Ireland tour opened in May of 1989. The Opera House Theatre in Blackpool. The cast included Maria Webb as Grisabella, Rosemary Ford as Bombaluna, and John Partridge as Alonzo. Following a 6-month engagement at Blackpool, they broke the theater's box office record and was seen by about 450,000 people. The production moved to the Edinburgh Playhouse for 3 months before closing in May of 1990 after another 2 months at Point Theatre in Dublin. The second national tour launched in June of 1993 at the Bristol Hippodrome, featuring Rosemary Ford as Grisabella, Robin Cousins as Montserrat, Simon Rice as Mistopheles, and Tony Monopoly as Old Deuteronomy. The tour would close at the Manchester Opera House in December of 1995. Now, following the closure of the original West End production, the nationwide tour embarked in 2003, with Chrissy Hammond starring as Grisabella, until Diane Blinkington took over the role in 2006. Hammond would then reprise the role again on tour from 2007 to 2008. Now, a UK and Ireland tour of Cats would launch in February of 2013 at the Edinburgh Playhouse with Joanna Ampel as Grisabella. Susan McFadden would take over the role during the tour's 3-week stop in Dublin. The production would run through 2014 before going back up to the West End. In between its limited West End runs, the musical returned to the Blackpool Opera House in 2015, this time starring Jane MacDonald as Grisabella. After a second West End revival, the production toured the UK in 2016 with Anita Louise Combe as Grisabella and McQuell Ward as Rum Tum Tugger. Now, the fun one that bears mentioning, Japan. Okay, if anybody is going to go big on something, you can count on the Japanese to make this absolutely fantastic, and they pulled it off without a hitch. They started a Japanese language production of Cats at the Shiki Theatre Company, has been playing continuously since it premiered in Tokyo in November of 1983. The production's a slow tour with engagements lasting several years in each of the 9 cities it visits. Now, an initial investment of 800 million yen, or 3.4 million, was requested to bring Cats, including a 300 million yen for the construction of a purpose-built theater was tailored to the needs of the musical. Now, normally this would be a big financial risk for the Shiki Theater Company, as it was meant for a long run, was needed to turn a profit. However, stage productions in Japan ran on a monthly basis at the time, and open-ended runs weren't heard of. The resulting success of this production led to what the local media would term a musical boom in the 1980s, with other Broadway musicals quickly following suit and opening in Japan. As of 2019, the show is performed at the purpose-built Cats Theater in Tokyo, has played over 10,000 performances to over 10 million audience members.
Again, I do not speak Chinese, or Japanese, but I kind of want to see it.
Yeah, no kidding. Similar to the original London staging, the set of the 1,200 capacity Cats Theater is built on a revolving stage floor, such that during the overture, the stage and sections of the stalls revolve approximately 180 degrees into place. In 1998, the Japanese production underwent major revisions to the choreography, stage, and costume designs. Following further revisions in 2018, the current incarnation features 27 named cats, including both Gemina and Silva, who have evolved into two separate characters, and an original character named Gilbert. Now, there have been numerous notable performers in the Japanese production, including Shintaro Sononoka as Munchkin from the original cast, Kaji Ishimura as Skimbleshanks in '92, Masaka Ichimura and Mayo Kawasaki. Yushi Harori holds the production's record for the longest appearing cast member. She started out in 1983 playing Jenny Anagatz and remained in that role for 20 years.
I can say she can do it in her sleep. She probably do it in a coma.
No kidding. Total performance tally, 4,251 shows. That's impressive. But they've also taken interesting steps into places like Vienna. They were taken also perform in Germany. Vienna was kind of interesting because they had their actual, 2,040 performances, more than 2.3 million audience members. But the thing I found that was kind of funny, the original cast included Ute Lemper, who played Malmaruna, Steve Martin, who played Muscatrap, Robert Montago, who played Pounceville, and Angelica Milster, who played Grisabella. Pia Downs was a member of the cast from 1987 to '89, covering several different characters, including Grisabella. The Vienna production also performed limited runs at the Kunstoper Berlin in East Germany in '87, and at the Moscow Operetta Theater in the Soviet Union.
Ooh.
They went behind the Iron Curtain. Now, a revival...
Did they bring me back these figures?
They should. The revival of the Virgin Burton Wine Production Company opened in 2019. We closed in 2022, including members Rory Six, who played Old Deuteronomy, Alexander Aller, who played Muscatrap, Felix Martin Ponchin, who played Gus Growltiger, and Buster Jones and Anna Milva Gomez, who played Grisabella. Germany put together a performance house, newly renovated Apparatus House in Hamburg. They would go on for a performance of 15 years, playing over 6,100 performances to 6.2 million audiences. The thing that's both kind of wild about this is that when you know how good a show has gone, is that they don't have to shut it down. The cast basically gets tired.
Yeah.
I mean, they get exhausted. I mean, can you imagine performing to 6.2 million people?
No. But I can't imagine performing to less than that either.
Yeah. Cats was the first stage production in the country to be mounted without public funding, and was also the first to run for multiple years. And its success established the medium as a profitable venture in Germany. The musical was also a huge boost for tourism in Hamburg, particularly the subdivision of St. Pauli, where it accounted for 30% of all tourists. The number of overnight visitors to the city increased by over 1 million per year within the first 5 years of the show's premiere.
Interesting.
That's kind of wild. After Hamburg, the German production transferred to Stuttgart, where it played for 2 years. Then Stage Entertainment took over mid of 2002. and moved the show up to Berlin. And later Düsseldorf, until 2005, and before touring other cities in 2006. Mir Entertainment launched a separate tour of Cats that ran from 2010 to 2013, performing in a traveling purpose-built tent theater. Besides Germany, the company also made stops in cities in Luxembourg, Switzerland, and Austria. But yeah, Cats has always been a big hit, around the world. Like they said, that they had 4 different production groups that left out of the whole Broadway show. It was big in London. It flew like wildfire through Europe. It's just kind of crazy that one show can have that much of an effect. They played in Sydney. They played in Sweden, Slovakia, Netherlands, Finland, Denmark, Poland, Bulgaria, Norway. Angel could go visit her Scandinavian friends and watch Cats,
Right?
and know what they're saying. The UK production would take a whirlwind tour from 2016 to 2018. Everybody get your maps out. We're gonna check them off.
Ooh.
You've got tour stops in Switzerland, Croatia, Belgium, Poland, Bulgaria, Germany, Norway, Sweden, Finland, Denmark, Netherlands, Luxembourg, Monaco, Portugal, Greece, Italy, Sweden. Go ahead and just cover the whole frickin' map. Over in Oceania, Sydney got to see the show from 1985 to 1987. Nice little tour there. Over with Australia, after they closed in Sydney, they would wind up transferring production to Melbourne, refurbished the old Her Majesty's Theatre, and there it would play from October 87 to December 88. Opening night cast included Megan Williams as Grisabella, Wood as Old Deuteronomy, Phillips as Rum Tum Tugger, Linda Hartley Clark as Demeter, Phoebe Taylor as Mama Runa, Rachel Beck as Ripple Teaser, and Sean Martin Higston as Plato McCavity. 1989 to 1990, the company toured the Festival Theatre of Adelaide, His Majesty's Theatre in Perth, Civic Theatre in Newcastle, Lyric Theatre in Brisbane, and the St. James Theatre in Auckland. This is the second national tour from 1993 to 1996, during which Della Hanna made her debut as Grisabella in 1984. A professional circus adaptation of Cats, titled Cats Run Away from the Circus, had a national tent tour from 1999 to 2001. I have to say, I wouldn't mind seeing some of those oddball second sets. You know that?
That would be, something.
Yeah. In 2014, Austria's Harvest Rain Theatre Company staged the biggest production of Cats in the Southern Hemisphere, with over 700 performers.
Wow.
Produced by Tim O'Connor, the production was performed at the Brisbane Convention and Exhibition Centre. Callum Mansfield directed and choreographed it, and its cast included Marina Pryor as Grisabella and Stephen Tandy as Christopher Jones and Gus. From October 2015 to May 2016, a revival tour in Australia with stops in Sydney, Hobart, Melbourne, Brisbane, Adelaide, and Perth. The revival featured singer-songwriter Delta Goodrich as Grisabella before Delia Hanna took over the role during the Adelaide and Perth sessions. The show would return to Auckland in 1995 as part of the 3-city New Zealand tour, and again in 2015, preceding the Australian tour. A New Zealand national tour played 16 cities in 2019 with a reimagined setting in a derelict Victorian theatre that was inspired by a post-earthquake Christchurch. 2025 Australia production will return in June of this year. Now, besides Japan, Cats is also produced regularly in other parts of Asia. English language productions of the musical, beginning with a tour, played in Singapore in 1993 to 94, Hong Kong, South Korea. Cats would return in 2002 to 2004 with an international touring company performing in Malaysia, South Korea, Shanghai, Taipei, and Beijing. The cast would include, in 2004, Cinderella Magliotta of the role of Grisabella. The touring company would also visit Australia again between 2007 and 2010, including stops in the regions of Taiwan, Macau, and Thailand, South Korea, China, Singapore, and Hong Kong, and Manila, along with Lee Salonga as Grisabella. Cats would wind up in Australia again in 2014 to 2015, making stops in South Korea, Singapore, and Macau. 2 years later, another Asian tour was launched, scheduling runs through 2020 with visits to South Korea, Hong Kong, and Taiwan, China, planned stops in the Philippines and Singapore, and Malaysia in 2020. Cats was China's highest-grossing musical in 2018, accounting for over 20% of the total grosses from all musicals staged in the country that year. Now, the musical has been translated and staged nationally in Asia. From September of 2008 to May of 2009, a Korean language production toured South Korea with Shin Yong-suk and Ok Yeon-hai alternating as Grisabella, Kim Jong-woo and Dae-sung alternating as Rum-Tum Tugger, with Kim Bo-yeon as Rumple-Teaser. This production was revived and toured South Korea from 2011 to 2012, with Insuni and Park Hae-lee taking turns to portray Grisabella. The first Chinese language production began touring various cities in China in 2012. They'd also take some trips into the Spanish-speaking and Portuguese-speaking portions of the world. In South America, productions would appear in Argentina, Chile, Brazil, Colombia, and other countries including in South Africa, Lebanon, Qatar, Turkey, Israel, and the United Arab Emirates. Now, a full-length production of Cats has been performed regularly for guests aboard the Royal Caribbean International Cruise Ship Oasis of the Seas, starting in autumn of 2014, with the cast rotating every 9 months.
That's kind of fun. We'll go on a cruise.
Yeah.
I'll see a musical.
No, let's go have some fun. And of course, it also has been performed in various professional regional theater companies. Broadway's Sacramento staged the musical in 2003 and 2009 at the Wells Fargo Pavilion. Both productions featured Ken Page reprising his role as Old Deuteronomy, along with Jacqueline Pirro Donovan as Grisabella and Jeffrey Denman as Munchausen. The 2010 amphitheater production of the movie starred Page as Old Deuteronomy, Stephanie J. Block as Grisabella, and Laura Teeter as Munchausen. The La Mirada Theater of the Performing Arts staged the musical in 2014. A cast that included Todd McCall as Rum-Tum Tugger. Nick Winston directed and choreographed the production of the Kilworth House Theater in 2019, with a cast that included Emma Hatton and Helen Anker. Set in a dilapidated London Underground station during World War II, the production was given a 5-star review by the stage for its radical reimagining of Cats. Now, the two things I will mention before we close this out. First of all, that they did make a call-in video of the original play of Cats. Always loved it. Like Sue said, we have the original copy. We burned it out. We have the DVD. It got all scratched up. Bad Cats. Then they tried to make a reimagining of it. And
all I can say is they had good ideas.
Yeah.
And I think it could have been decent if they hadn't had the creepiest costumes on the planet.
Yeah, they definitely screwed that up badly. But, you know, the thing is, if you get a chance, go check out the originals. You know, the VHSs are out there. I think you can probably see them on YouTube and places. But the music is what is just straight out awesome. If you get a chance, go ahead and pull out a cassette or a DVD and just listen to it. It's some awesome music. But this has been the Bearded Historian for this day in history. And from the Files, you folks have a good week. We'll see you next week.
Oh, bye-bye.